Hello everyone and welcome to another HOI4 modding lesson from the Iron Workshop. Now I apologize for the delay with this lesson, but I had some issues with the Cold War mod as well as issues in my personal life that delayed the release of this lesson, but we're now finally here. So let's get to it. In this lesson we're going to learn how to create new ground and air units in HOI4, starting armies that contain these units. Now I will have a separate lesson for creating naval units, since that is a bit more complex and does require a bit of a different approach due to changes done by Paradox in Mend the Guns. So we'll deal with that separately. And in this lesson, we'll only be talking about the air units and the land units. Okay, so as with any other lesson, the first thing that we need to do is to create our new mod that will change these units. So we'll open the launcher, we'll go to mods, mod tools, create mod. We'll just call it the units mod. You can call it whatever you like, obviously. Units mod. Create mod, and there we have it. Now that we have our mod created, let's open our mod folder in Documents, Paradox Interactive, HOI4 mod. So here we have our folder, and we finished step number 1, and now we'll move to step number 2, and that is to create the folder and file structure. Okay, so let's open the HOI4 folder, which is located in Steam, Steam Apps, Common HOI4. And from here, we'll be copying a couple of things. Now, we'll be creating very basic units. You can always go deeper with naming them and things like that. I won't be dealing with that in this lesson, just to keep things simple. But we will have functional working units at the start of the game. Right, so the first thing that we will need from here is the history folder, right? So I'll just create this folder in here. And from the history folder, we'll need two folders. First of all, the units folder and the countries folder. Now, from the countries folder, I will take the Cuba file, just because the Cuba OOB, or the order of battle, the starting units, is much smaller, so it's much easier to understand. But obviously you can take the file of any other country that you want to use, that you want to change the units for. This is only for the purpose of this lesson. So let's find the Cuba file. There we are. We'll copy it over to our mod. And I'll go back to the history folder. And I'll copy the Cuba order of battle, the existing one. So let's find it. Cuba. There we are. And I'll copy it over here. Excellent. Now we will be going back to the units folder just to take some snippets of code of syntax that we will need. But for now, this is all the files that we need. And we can go to the next step, which is to creating our land units. Let's get to it. All right, so before we start adding things or changing things, I do want to take a look at the order of battle file, since it's important that you understand how this file is built and what it contains. That'll make the process of changing things much easier as well. The typical order of battle, or OOB file, will contain templates such as these, and these templates are required in order for you to add land units such as infantry, armor divisions, things like that. If your unit does not have a template assigned, it will not appear in the game. In fact, it might actually cause significant problems. So it's quite important that you get templates in your OOB file. Now, if you want to create new templates, I have a separate tutorial on that, and I will have a link to that in the description. Right after that, you will find this area, which contains the units themselves, which are built according to a template, right? Next, you will probably find air wings. Specifically in the Cuba file, we don't have air wings added, but in this lesson, we will be adding completely new air wings to Cuba. And another thing that you might find in a typical order of battle file is the production effect or the production queue, where you will be able to add the starting production of a country, right? So for example, if you want your country to start creating infantry equipment at the beginning of the game without you having to add it manually, you can add it in here. Let's go back into the templates and just take a quick look. So Cuba has very simple templates, mostly consisting of infantry and cavalry. And these templates must contain units that the country has already researched the technology for, okay? That means that if I want to change the infantry to an armor division, Cuba, the country, must have the armor division technology researched and enabled in the game. If you do not have that, it is possible that you will see the unit, but the equipment will malfunction, meaning that the unit will not work correctly. Also, it's quite possible that you will get an error in the error log if you are in debug mode in the game. So let's begin with changing this, right? So we will start with changing some of these templates, and then we will be assigning the units that will be changing these templates. Right, so I want to make a very simple change. In this template called Brigada de Infanteria, whatever, you get it, I want to add an armor division, right? So it's not all infantry, and I want to add some motorized units as well. Now, I can't just put these in here and expect them to work. I need to put the units. Now, let's go ahead and locate the units themselves. We'll go into the vanilla HOI4 folder. In here, we'll go to common. In common, you will have a folder called units. And here you have the syntax for all the units that you might want to add. So I want to add motorized units. So I can either search for motorized, but that will give me a lot of stuff as results. The reason for this is because the syntax for motorized appears quite a bit. What I'm going to do instead, I know that motorized units are inside of the infantry file. So we can open that. Now, if you don't know that the motorized unit is inside of the infantry, what you can do, you can hit Ctrl+F in Notepad++. That will bring up the find window. In here, switch to find in files and change the directory that we're looking for. So I'm going to just copy this directory completely. I'm going to put it in here. And I want to find anything related to motorized. Right. And in here, again, I'll get quite a bit of results, but it will help me to find it a bit easier, right? So it will require a bit of searching, but since motorized units are infantry units, I know that I have to search for it in infantry. For you, if you're adding something else, it might take a bit longer to find it. But one thing that can help you locate exactly what you're looking for is that the motorized unit, if it's the unit syntax, it will look like this, right? So it starts motorized, then there's an equal sign and an opening bracket. That means that this is specifically talking about the motorized unit, right? Not anything else, not a subunit, not a name for the unit, not anything like that. This is the entry for the motorized unit, and this is the syntax that I will need to edit. So let's copy this. Okay, and I'll just put it in here instead of the existing infantry. And now we'll go back, and now we want to add an armor division. So I'm going to use the same technique. I'm going to hit Ctrl F on my keyboard, find in files, and I'm going to type armor. Okay, now there's a lot of stuff coming up, so I'm just going to scroll through it. I don't want an armored car, I want an armor unit. So let's see where the armor is hiding. Now you will notice that a lot of these entries are in equipment. Now we're not adding equipment at this point, we are adding the unit itself. So it's quite important that you ignore the files that are in the equipment folder. That is not what we need. Okay, this is all equipment, this is all equipment. And here we have reached the units. Okay, so we have something here called light armor. Okay, that's good enough. So I'm going to copy this entry. And I'm going to put it here in my file. Okay, let's just save it at this point. Excellent. So that means that now when we start the game, all of our units that we've added that are using this template will have one motorized, one light armor division, and 2 infantry divisions. Okay, so I think that's enough of a change. Now let's go and look at the units entry. Now, what's happening in here? So first of all, it's a bit messy in here. So this is one entry for one division, and this is the division name. Now, as far as names go, it can be a bit complex since the game uses some kind of a naming convention and how it names units. It doesn't really matter for the purpose of this lesson. We're going to ignore this for now. What's important for us is the location. And this number here is a province, okay? It is not a state, it is a province. In this case, it's province that is the capital, Havana, okay? Havana. Right, so if I want my unit to be located in the province that is Havana, that is the number that I need to put in here. If I want it to be another province, then I will need to change the location in here to another province. Now the way that you can find provinces, opening the game in debug mode, going to the nudge tool, and locating the province that you want your unit to be located in, okay? So I'm going to do it right now. Okay, so once you've opened the game, you can go directly into the nudge tool. Now I will remind you that the nudge tool will only be available if your game is in debug mode. If you don't know how to enable debug mode, I will have a link to that lesson in the description as well. So let's go into nudge, and we are dealing with Cuba. So right now, Havana is here. And let's say that I want my units to be in a different province, okay? So if we look at the file here, it's 7622, and it is right here, right? So that is Havana. But let's relocate our units to this state, 7590. So I'm just going to type 7590. Now you don't have to add the comment if you don't want to. I don't think that particular province has a victory point, so it doesn't really matter. Let's move our other unit as well to 7590. Now this is the template that the unit will be using, okay? And it's very important that the template is correct. This is the name of the template. Now it's okay if you have spaces in the name, as long as you use quotation marks, okay? It's quite important. Don't miss these quotation marks, because if you miss them, then the game will not recognize the template correctly. Okay, this is the starting unit experience, so the experience that the unit will start with. It goes from 0, 1 to 1.0, and that means that it's going to be the most highly experienced unit in the game. Sure, let's enable it for now. And this is our starting equipment factor. So how much equipment the unit will have at the beginning of the game. Again, let's give our units the highest amount of equipment. And I'm just going to apply these figures in here as well. Okay, these are all the changes we had to do here. Okay, excellent. And this is all regarding the land units. Now, we can actually go in and test this right now in the game. However, there is something that you need to remember. This will not work currently because Cuba does not have motorized and light armor researched. Okay, let me just, actually, I think it's the best example is if you see it in the game. So I'm going to close Hearts-Fire 4. I'm going to open it with my units mod, and we'll see what happens in the game. Okay, so we're now in the game. Now our units are positioned correctly. And if you look here, it even looks like we have the unit showing properly, right? So it looks like an armor division. However, you will notice that first of all, the error log will give you something like this, trying to fill variant where none exists, okay? And unit in has locked equipment. These are errors that, again, that are happening because Cuba does not have the appropriate technology unlocked, okay? So what happens here is the following. If I click the unit, first of all, we see that it has the highest level of experience, just like we set it. And if I click here, you'll see that in motorized and light tank, there is nothing for equipment. So that needs to be fixed. So let's fix it now. Now, another thing that I should mention about editing these OOB files, order of battle files, is that they don't update on the fly. So if I make changes now, I will not see them until the history file of the country is loaded again. Now, the way that you can load the country history file is simply by closing and opening the game again. However, another way that you can do it is just by closing the game and going into the main menu. And then we'll force the game to refresh the history file by clicking on another bookmark, on a different bookmark. It says updating history. And then going back and going again to the bookmark that we need. And now the files will be updated, sorry. Okay, so let's go ahead and add the appropriate technology that will enable these two units, okay? So first of all, we need the light armor technology. Now, technologies unlock equipment, okay? So we need the technology that unlocks this unit, okay, and the equipment for it. Now, the easiest way to find this is by doing the following. Let's open the vanilla Hearts-Fire 4 folder. We'll go to common, and this time we'll go to technologies. I'm going to copy the path to this folder. I'm going to again hit Control F, go to find in files. And in here, I want to locate the technology that unlocks both the unit, in this case, light armor, and the equipment, light armor tanks, okay, or light tanks. So let's just put it in find what and hit find all. And in here, you'll see that the technology that unlocks it is located right over here. So you can just double click. And that's what it's called, GW tank, Great War Tank, okay? So we will need to add this technology to the Cuba history file. Hopefully you're following, I know it's a bit complex. So we'll go back into our mod, we'll go to history, countries, and that is why we copied this file at the beginning. And in here, you will usually find a section called set technologies. Okay, let's just find it. Here we are, set technology. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new line. I'm going to paste this GW tank in here. equals 1. Now equals 1 means that the technology has been researched. Okay, excellent. So now we can save it. And we will also need the technology for the motorized units. So I'm going to repeat the same process again. I'm going to copy motorized, Control F, find in files, make sure you're looking for it in technologies, find all. And here there's quite a bit of stuff. There we go. Okay. So this is the name of the technology, motorized infantry. Now it's totally fine if it takes you a while to locate these. There's also many pointers that you will find with time. For example, here it was easier to find since I saw that this section unlocks motorized equipment. Okay, so this is the technology that we need, and we are going to add it as well. Now let's save it. And let's see how this affects our units in the game now. We're just going to refresh the history file the way that I showed you. So updating history, going back to the 1936 bookmark. And now let's load Cuba again. Now I'm not sure if it will update the technologies, but it actually might do that. Let's just take a look and see if the unit shows up properly. Okay, there we go. So the unit shows up properly, since the game now knows which equipment to assign to these units, since they are now researched in our research tree. Okay, there we have the motorized units and the Great War tank. Okay, excellent. The log file may still show you the old errors. You can just ignore these. If they show up correctly in the game, that just means that the log file still shows older errors that are no longer relevant. Once you close the game completely and reopen it, these errors will not appear anymore. Okay, so we have our land units working correctly. Now, as I said, I want to add some air units, and this is what we're going to do in the next step. Okay, now let's get to adding air units to Cuba. Now, air units are a little bit more complicated, only in the sense that they require an airfield to be present where you are adding them. Now, if you look at Cuba here, we see that they already have an airbase here. And I think they actually have another one. No, they just have only this one. Okay, so we'll be adding our units in here. Now, I will show you very briefly how you can add your own airfields. It's actually not that complicated. And it might be critical for you to add them in case your country doesn't have, or the country that you're adding the air units for doesn't have airfields at all. So the way that you can add airfields is in the following. We'll go to history, and in here we'll need another folder. So I'm going to, let me just clean up the screen a little bit. So we're going to the vanilla game, and we'll go to history. We'll go to states. And here I want to locate the Cuba state. Let me just recreate the folder. States. Okay. Now I can tell the number of the state of Cuba just by hitting Control and Alt when I'm in the game. In the nudge tool, it will show you just by hovering. So here I see that the state ID for Cuba is 315. So I'm just going to search for 315. There we are. So I'm going to copy it. And if I open the Cuba file, there's a lot of stuff in here. We're not going to deal with most of it. What we're interested in is the air bases. Okay, so we have a section here called History. Inside of it, we have a section called Buildings. And inside of Buildings, you see that we have airbase. Okay, now airbases are spread randomly throughout a state, so you're not supposed to assign them to a particular province. But if you want them to be present in a state, for example, if I wanted to add an airbase in Guatemala, I will need to add History, Buildings, put airbase 1 or the level of the airbase that I want to have. So it can be 5 as well, up to 10, right? Okay, so let's just upgrade our airbase in this example to 5, and we'll save it. And now let's add our air units. Now, the best way to add the air units into the OOB, or the order of battle, is by just copying them from another OOB. That way you will not make any syntax errors. So let's go to history, units. I'm just going to go and copy something from the United States. Let's find those air units. Okay, so in here you see that I have a section called Air Wings. So I'm going to copy this with a unit that is already present. We'll put it in here. Now make sure to close those brackets, because as you can see here, this bracket is highlighted in red because it is not closed. So I'm going to close it. And this will be the base that we will be working with. And let's take a look at what we have in here. Now, this is just a commented line. This is not something that the game actually does anything with. The game ignores this line. This is for you, for the developer, for the modder to put in comments. Next, we have the state number, right? So this is the state where the airfield is located in. So obviously we'll be changing this to the Cuba state. Let's just go back into the game, and we know that the Cuba state is 315. So I'm going to change it in here. These are again comments, so we don't really need them at this point. Now this is the air wing equipment. So with air wings, the difference is that you don't put units, you put equipment. And here we have the equipment name. I will show you in a moment how we are going to add this as well to our technology. Next, we have the owner. Now, the owner has to be the country that is using this equipment. Cuba must have the appropriate technology available for them to even show up, right? So let's just see what happens if I save this file as it is right now and try to load it in the game. Now I'm going to restart the game completely, just not to leave anything to chance. Okay, so as you can see, despite the fact that we have our air wings set in the OOB file, they do not show up in the game. And that is because we lack the technology of this equipment, of these air wings in Cuba. So let's fix that. As we've seen before, when we're adding technologies, we need the technology that unlocks the unit and the equipment. Now with air wings, we are dealing with equipment. So let's just search for the technology that unlocks this particular equipment. So I'm going to hit Control F, find in files, make sure it's pointed to technologies, find all. Okay. As you can see here, it's a bit simpler. There aren't as many results. So I'm going to double click. And this is the name of the technology, Early Bomber. So let's just copy that, go into our Cuba file, give ourselves the technology, and add the technology for the next equipment. Okay, so this technology is called CAS1. Now, please note, okay, so this technology is called CAS1. So we're going to add this one. And don't forget to save the file. Now, in case you're wondering, you can also skip technologies. So for example, I can add CAS equipment 2, which is the newer, more advanced version of the close air support unit. But obviously I have to add the technology as well, and it will still work in the game. So I have these units in here, okay? As you can see, we have close air support too. And if we look at the tech tree, it does create a bit of a weird situation where you have a technology that's researched before the technology that is required before it is not researched, but it is possible. And as far as I can tell, it doesn't generate any errors in the game, just so you know. Another thing that I want to mention is that you have to pay attention to the capacity of the airbase where your air wings are located in. So for example, in here, the maximum capacity is 1000 planes. If I were to add in my files here 2000 and another 3000, obviously they will not fit. And once they do not fit, they will not show up in the game. Okay, so it's quite important to make sure that the capacity fits the amount of planes that you're adding. Obviously, you can change the capacity by going to the state file and upgrading the level of the airbase to a higher level. But do make sure to restart your game, since that is not something that will be uploaded by just refreshing the history file with the bookmark switch. Okay. All right, so we now have air wings as well in Cuba. Awesome. So we have an army, quite an advanced one. We have some air wings that we can bomb with. And now we'll be moving on to the last section, which is creating the starting production. Okay, time to wrap it up. So let's get to the final step of creating the starting production or the starting equipment. Cuba starts with the infantry equipment production at the start of the game. But let's say that I also want Cuba to add some motorized units at the start of the game. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this whole section. In here, I'm going to change the type of equipment to the motorized equipment. So let's just find the syntax for that. Now, equipment is located in the vanilla game. Specifically, we want to look for equipment. So we'll need to go to Common, Units, Equipment. And we'll be looking for the motorized equipment. Okay, there we go. Okay. Now, this is the file responsible for the motorized equipment, but there's one thing here that you really need to pay attention to. If I were to put motorized equipment in here, it would not work. The reason for this is because this first section, and this is true for a lot of the technologies of the equipment, for example, the armor units and air wings, things like that, this is an archetype. Right? So this is like the initial design. This is not the actual equipment that you produce in the game. And this is not what you are going to be adding to your production. What you will be adding is this one. And you can tell them apart simply because they're not an archetype. So they don't have the line is archetype yes. And they actually have their own setting for archetype. And they are referring in here. Okay. So we're going to copy this one. And we're going to put it in here. Now I can actually tell the game at the beginning to produce, for example, foreign equipment. So we can have USA in here, right? And produce American motorized equipment. But for now, we'll keep it simple. We'll keep it with Cuba. In here, we have the requested factories. So these are the amount of factories that will be producing this equipment. For experiment's sake, let's just put it at 10. This is the efficiency cap that this production starts with. So here it's about 50%. Let's just go ahead and make it 100. And this is the actual efficiency at which the equipment is being produced. We'll keep it at 100. Let's save this thing, go into the game and see how it looks. Okay, so we're in the game. Let's take a look at our starting production. So as you can see, the game has assigned 10 factories to produce this unit, but because Cuba doesn't have enough military factories, they're grayed out. So once we get these factories, this will be relevant. Next, the production efficiency is also not amazing, and the production efficiency cap is also at 50. These are things that have to do with technology limitations. So even if you put it in here at 100 and at 100, it will not be applied if the country cannot actually be at this level of production efficiency. Okay, so this is basically all you need to know about creating the starting production. I will again just emphasize this point because I assume there will be questions about it. When you're adding equipment for production, make sure not to add the archetypes because it will not work. This is basically all we have to talk about with regards to creating your starting armies. I know it's a bit complex. Hopefully you've been following. Hopefully you will be producing awesome orders of battle of your own. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next lesson on the Iron Workshop. Bye bye. Hey guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button and subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Check out these other videos on the Iron Workshop that you might enjoy as well. Please consider supporting the Iron Workshop on Patreon. This will allow the channel to grow and become even better. Thank you.